This is Andrew from FX Medicine. We thank you so much for your support over the last 2 years. We'd really love to remain clinically relevant to your practice. So if you know of an expert in some area, please let us know. You can contact us on fxmedicine.com.au, Facebook or Twitter. This is FX Medicine. I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook. Joining me on the line today is Lauren Lacey, owner and volunteer manager at Involvement Volunteers International. She's a naturopath and nutritionist. Lauren graduated from Endeavour College with a Bachelor of Health Science, Harvard University with a postgraduate certificate in Humanitarian Response to Conflict and Disaster, and has also completed a Masters of Marketing at the University of Newcastle. She has worked as a clinical nutritionist and naturopath within Australia, and over the past 7 years has used her expertise to set up health projects in developing communities. And this is a very interesting thing that she does. Lauren is also a passionate marathon runner. I've often called her a pocket rocket. And she's a mum of 2 boys. Welcome to FX Medicine, Lauren. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Andrew. Nice to be here.
Now, you might be nourished by what you've accomplished, but I can't say that you're actually too good because you have only just returned from your volunteer work in Greece. Is that correct?
That's correct. Just stepped off the plane last night.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Very fresh.
Very fresh, I'll bet. Now, I want to go into this, give our listeners a little bit of a background of what you've been doing. Can you tell me what you've been doing in Greece?
Yeah, so basically I had a passion to, I've been watching the refugee Syrian crisis for quite some time, and, you know, considering we run different various projects for our org, thought, okay, let's, this is something that I really want to do, really want to help with, be a part of. And wanted to take a different scope on it and do a nutrition sort of naturopathic focused project looking at malnutrition and herbal support for breastfeeding mothers. So I put out a post on the Facebook Naturopathic page and, was hoping for a team of 4 to 6 and got an overwhelming amount of response from Nats and Nuts and ended up taking a team of 30. And that expanded to doctors and nurses as well. So we were an integrative bunch, quite colourful, different personalities, but it really was a nice complement to work together.
But that would have shown in their various specialties as well. Was it just naturopaths, or did you have nutritionists, acupuncturists, any other types of health professionals with you?
We had a couple of naturopaths who had yoga teaching experience and massage therapy, and the massage therapy was a huge hit. Daniela in an Oxford camp, the women loved her, and the teams actually asked if she could spend more time in her day doing, hand massages, foot massages and shoulder massage, and it was just a really nice, because the women, as you can imagine, don't get treated. So it was a lovely thing to add on to the naturopathic skill set.
And did you specialise, or did you restrict the scope of your help there to breastfeeding?
Well, because the team was so large, 30 of us, we had split the team up into smaller groups.
Yeah.
So there were 2 projects in particular that focused on the infant, young nutrition and breastfeeding. And Ritsona Camp was the one that I worked at, and it was heavily based on encouraging breastfeeding support for women in that first 6 months. So statistics show infant mortality rates are increased when you introduce formula in a refugee emergency environment, because there's so many factors, sterilising bottles, access to clean water, that come into play, whereas breast milk is readily available. There's a misconception that, with trauma comes no milk. And yes, we know that stress definitely decreases supply, but the more you get that baby suckling, the more the prolactin is, increased, and the milk will come back in if you've got the right support network. So that was one of my sort of passion focuses, being a mum who breastfed both my boys for the first 3 years of life and just saw how much it benefited them. I really wanted to, assist from that nutritional standpoint.
Yeah.
And where the naturopaths came in beautifully for that too was Jules and Sharon had the idea to make breastfeeding teas, which expanded into immune teas. So we went to the local herbal shops, bought a whole bunch of dried herbs, and everything in Greece is amazing quality. It's all locally grown and picked and harvested. So they made up some nice teas, and then in the women's tent, we taught the women how to mix them up and make them together, and then shared a pot of tea with them as well. So that was a really beautiful experience that came out of that.
Wow. There's already different questions going through my mind. I'll get to cultural issues a little bit later.
Yes.
But you mentioned that massage was a huge hit. So did you only have one massage therapist there?
We did, and we just got so much feedback, from the camps, that it was just so well received, and such, again, I mean, you kind of think about just all the essentials, but you forget that the women and the families are living in these camps. It's their life. So things like nail polish, they get so excited by that because it gives them something to make them feel beautiful and feminine. Yeah. And the massage just touched the benefits of touch and soothing, those tired and sore muscles is just so beneficial from an emotional standpoint, as well.
Look, you're absolutely right. Indeed, like even in our developed, nice, safe country that we have here in Australia, there was a really good study done by Endeavour College in Melbourne, under the auspices of Leslie Braun and her group and Professor Frank Rosenfeld at the Alfred Hospital, looking at elective cardiac surgery patients. And they thought, well, what about the benefits of massage? How do we massage these people when some of them have had their, a cracked chest? They've had their chest split open and wired. It's now wired shut because they've had valve replacements, major heart surgery. They can't lie on their front to have a back massage. So what do we do? What about personal space, intimate space issues? So all they did was a foot massage, and it had incredible measurable effects on decrease of inotropes, decrease of pain medication, incredible effects. I've got to ask you, these people have been through much more traumatic instances where it is their very lives that are in danger.
Yes.
So how did touch and the trust issue get broached?
Yeah, I think we introduced the massage about a week into it, where Daniela had been there, and she's also a trauma counsellor, so she has some nice different things to complement, because the people, they're incredibly traumatised with grief and loss. They've witnessed death, murder, rape, kidnapping, torture. There was quite a few shrapnel wounds that we saw that were infected, that hadn't been treated properly. And I guess the thing to point out too is it's not just Syria refugees that are coming through Greece. You've got people from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Yemen, some of the African continents too, because they tend to travel via land and get all the way to Turkey, and then they cross at sea at Turkey into Greece.
Yep.
So that's where, that's their entry point into Europe. So you get so many nationalities living together, which also creates its own issues because disagreements on things, the different languages. You've got, the Kurdish, the Farsi language, and then you've got the Syrians who speak Arabic. So, we saw on the first day we were there was a woman who was pushed over and beaten over a blanket that she was trying to get for her child. And, between the different cultures, it's quite full on in day in the life of a camp.
I've got to broach some of this sort of thing from a security perspective. We in the Western world get our nice little, ABC, SBS, CNN, whoever the news broadcaster is. But these can be highly swayed, let's say, depending on which sensationalised story they want to pursue. Indeed, I will always remember one where a reporter was tripping over people tripping people over to try and gain a more sensationalistic photo. And she was caught red-handed on camera tripping people up, which disgusted me. But then there's also this fear of the people who these refugees are coming into, the country people who these people are coming into from a security perspective. Who are they? What are they bringing with them? Are they safe? Are they indeed terrorists? What about cultural aspects compared to how men and women interact in Greece compared to or contrasting to how men and women interact in maybe Afghanistan or Pakistan?
Yeah.
How did you broach this one?
Yeah, well, look, I found it was very segregated. Chios, where I worked on the last week, which is an island hotspot where the boats are arriving into, and they're people smuggled, right? So basically they leave from Turkey on a dinghy. They pay about 1,800 to 2,000 euro just to get on that boat. When they arrive to the boat, the people smuggler says, dump your bags, they're not coming, so they have to leave everything behind. They're usually at gunpoint, but they force someone in the boat to be a driver because the people smuggler obviously isn't going to risk, his livelihood. If they get caught in Turkish waters, they get rerouted, and the payment allows seven chances. So they hope that they, one of these arrivals that get through. Yep. If they get caught in Greek waters, the Greek Coast Guard will facilitate them in. Yep. And then they get placed in Suda camp and they get checked for documentation. So those that have legitimate papers from countries that are considered, fleeing war will be moved on to the mainland eventually, and those who don't get sent back. The Greeks, initially they were very welcoming and, wanted to help as much as they can. They had, sometimes several boats with 50 to 100 people landing a day. Mm-hmm. What I think has happened culturally, sort of now that it's been a few years on, is all those islands, the Aegean Islands, they were all tourism spots for, holiday makers, especially in summer, and the locals rely on business in the summer to get them through the winter because winter's cold and everything closes down. Yep. What's happened is, obviously tourism has taken a huge hit, and the locals are no longer embracing the refugees as they once did when they first started coming in, because now it's their livelihoods at stake as well.
Yeah, it's a practical load on infrastructure and the effects that it has on it, and it's not nice. It's not nice. It's not a pleasant thing. It's got to be talked about.
No. Well, that's right. And there's a group called the Golden Dawn who are very anti-refugees, who are sort of hanging around Athens and also on the islands. And in November last year, they were throwing fire bombs, big boulder rocks. They actually attacked one of the camps. So there's definitely some hostility. I would say from my experience, it was 50-50 split. So 50% were supportive of the refugees and understood it was their governments that were the problem and that they're just trying to get their families to safety. Yeah. And then there was the other sort of 50% who were definitely somewhat resentful. And this is just the island. I think mainland's a bit different because there is more work, even though it's still poor being Greece in its current economic crisis. But yeah, it's a definitely sensitive topic. And then you've got, EU funding, or they said in Suda, they were giving 30,000 euro for food programs. So the Greeks would look at that and go, well, these refugees are getting all this support. What about us?
What about us?
Because our government isn't helping. Yeah. So you've got those political sensitivity.
You were in Greece, and they're part of what's called PIGS, which was the Portugal, Italy, Greece and Spain, the countries that were doing the worst out of the world economic crisis from, when was that, 2008, wasn't
it? Yeah. Well, it's 70 for the youth in Greece. It's 75% unemployment rate, and it's about 55% unemployment rate for the general population. So It's really bad.
Wowee. So
you can imagine.
There's a whole onion skin effect here, isn't there? You uncover one issue and there's another issue underlying it and another one. There's so many different viewpoints when you're talking about cultural issues as well, turning it into a melting pot. So I've got to ask then, what you said earlier on in our interview, you said the women weren't being treated.
Yeah, like treated medically, you mean? Yeah, so it depends on when you first get to the islands, it's all the local NGOs who get in there, do the hard work. Thirst was one of the NGOs we worked with, and they were absolutely incredible. So as soon as a boat arrives, the military will just lock them up until the morning if it's during midnight.
Yep.
So what this team do is they get there with warm blankets, hot tea, food, new clothes, so that everyone can be warm until the morning, because it was freezing. Like, I'm talking like ski gear freezing. The wind chill factor felt like -20
Wow.
on the island. Yeah, really cold, which is not what you associate Greece with. But yeah, if it wasn't for those local NGOs, and these are Greek local NGOs, the people would be, suffering. There'd be more hypothermia cases, which was still an issue as it is. But yeah, they just get in there and they help and they cover those gaps
Yep.
that, wouldn't be there otherwise. And that to me was really inspiring to see everyone banding together. And the lady who runs this, she had a little boutique hotel sort of down the coast. And she came about that one of the boats landed on her beachfront doorstep and she heard babies screaming and ran down to help. And then now she's turned her little boutique hotel into volunteer accommodation and devotes her whole life to helping refugees. So
Wow.
really, really moving and really giving, some locals.
I've got to say, we are so insulated here in Australia. These people are going to die. They're dealing with an acute medical crisis. I've got to ask, with the different cultural acceptance of natural medicines, though, like, for instance, you were in Chios. That's where mastic gum is from.
Yes.
So,
you know that.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah. So how relevant were your skills as a naturopath accepted by, the Greek people who you were, working alongside, but also the people that you were treating? Was naturopathy or natural medicines, was it a more accepted practice?
Yeah, and I think because naturopaths don't really exist in the same way that they do here. So when I'm first speaking with the local NGOs and the local teams, I tend to come from a more nutrition standpoint because they understand how we can work with them.
Yep.
If I say we're naturopaths, they kind of get a bit confused and think, well, you're not a doctor, you're not a nurse, we don't really know what to do with you. And then it's up to us to sort of prove credibility by showing what we can do with herbs. And from what I found with the Greeks and the Syrians, they're so in touch with natural medicines as it is that they're very open. Like, they love the herbal teas. They use lots of herbal remedies as it is. Just from going to a pharmacy, the pharmacies tend to be a lot more integrative in regards to what they sell. It's not just all, just heavy-duty medicines. They've got some sort of heavy-duty herbs as well. So
And
they would definitely...
Is that partly because of expense?
Yeah, possibly. It could be expensive, and I think it's just more normalised. Like, a lot of European doctors, they learn herbal medicines as a part of their training. So you often get, in Germany in particular, you get the offering of, do you want the natural or do you want the drug? And they understand both equally. So it's
without
just a lot
judgment.
more
Wow. We could learn a lot in Australia from that.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like the herbs over there. They're studied like pharmaceutical drugs. They'd have proper clinical trials. So it's definitely more accepted, I would say, for sure.
Now that you've landed back in Australia from your trip to Greece, with that team of health professionals, which I might add to our listeners that you almost single-handedly assembled. Well done to you. Tell me a little bit more about how this idea bloomed and the process of recruiting the various healthcare professionals.
Well, I guess it comes from my background. So with our organisation involvement, Volunteers International, I started off with my husband volunteering quite a few years ago now. I think it was 2008 in India, where I was volunteering as a nutritionist there, sort of assisting the health team. Took a whole bunch of supplements over and found it was so beneficial and so welcome that I wanted to do more project work around it long term, so that we were benefiting the people, not just sort of sporadically but ongoing. So we set up a long-term project in northern India, Bodh Gaya, then did the same in Fiji, working in a medical clinic there, That one's a little bit more dietetic nutrition focused than naturopathic, but naturopaths have still worked in that team, doing measurements and assessments and whatnot, because Fiji is a whole other issue. It's got malnutrition from an overeating, just the wrong, non-nourishing food perspective, whereas this, Syria is true, proper, malnutrition.
Malnutrition,
so from those two projects, India and Fiji being, seeing how much success we had, wanted to do similar, in this environment. And this is sort of the first real emergency type project work that we've done. So it was a huge learning curve. And it was great to have the medical, the doctors and the nurses in there with their expertise to sort of guide some of the things as well, and we could sort of come in and complement.
Yeah.
But if, a lot of, I think the second week was where people started to think, think of creative ways how they can bring in their skills, like the teas, and then looking at, we were doing, for example, so Bioceuticals donated a huge amount of protein, the ISO whey, the bars, the energy bars, which were probably the biggest hit, and then some superfood powders as well. So we had in Ritsona, they give out Greek yogurt to the children in the children and infant feeding program. So we were adding protein powder into that yogurt, which made it taste so much better because Greek yogurt's sour, right? So
right.
It was, and they were mixing, before that they were mixing jam into it, which was, sugary.
Yeah.
So it was a nice alternative, and then, just increasing that protein amount.
Yeah.
We chopped up the protein bars as well into little sort of bite-sized pieces for the kids, and then all at Chios, they had food packs, so they were getting like sugary muesli bars, white bread, and we switched it out. So we did some, Jewel made some, she bought food processors and was making raw balls. So we added protein powder and the whole food powders to those, and then we were switching out the muesli bars for the protein bars, and everyone loved them. Like I would say those protein bars, were hugely popular. And then you've got the issue, because luckily we had, a substantial donation, but with distribution comes a whole other kettle of fish, in that if you don't have enough for everyone, they generally don't want you to give it at all, because it creates fighting, favoritism. So that was a whole other challenge in making sure we had
that's
enough.
One of those layers of the onion. By helping, you can create other problems. We've seen this with the, aren't we good in our Western wisdom, trying to help the Ethiopian famine many years ago now. Oh, let's feed them milk because the poor dears haven't got enough milk. They're lactose intolerant. Good on you. Good on you, Western guys, So I've got to ask then a couple of questions here. I don't know about Mediterranean or Middle Eastern type prevalence of lactose intolerance or intolerance to things like whey or anything like that. But what about things like, the frank deficiencies that we never see here? I've never seen beriberi. I've never seen pellagra.
No.
I've never seen kwashiorkor. Did you see these?
Yes. Yeah, well, no, I didn't see those in particular, but vitamin C, so scurvy was definitely, coming up. And vitamin D deficiency, which is a problem everywhere. That, everyone, because they're all the women and children, they're covered up as well, so they're just not getting that sun exposure. Mediterranean diet is amazing, but it's just not getting funneled through to refugee camps. Everything, and when you talk about dairy, a lot of us gnats and nuts tend to avoid it, just being the way that it affects our bodies. But we found that the quality of the dairy there was so different, and same with the wheat, because they're big on local farming, not spraying with pesticides. And I honestly, personally think pesticides are, a huge part of the problem in Australia. Same with peanuts, that can be more of a pesticide allergy than the actual nut half the time. So, you're getting freshness, high quality food that just wasn't upsetting. And maybe because we've had periods of not eating these foods, but things that would normally upset us were generally being okay in small amounts. So, it was an interesting thing to observe, especially the bread, because they give you bread with every meal. But the bread was just beautiful. It's not, so different from what you get in Australia. And you could just taste it from everything that they make. because it's not only locally picked and picked ripened, they're making sauces all from scratch. So you're just getting such rich, robust, beautiful flavours that, you just kind of go, wow, like missing out.
Yeah, well, that's right. We have no idea how alienated we have become to where our food should have come from, And this is why I love talking to natural medicine practitioners that truly embrace the root cause, the whole food, the real deal, and trying to teach that message, trying to take that message out to the population in Australia. You're taking it to people that just simply have not had access to it from war and political unrest. How did you experience, though, the treatment of women to men and things like that? Was there gender bias? Was there...
There definitely was. I mean, the priority is women and children to make sure they're safe first.
Yep.
So generally, when they get into Chios, the women and children are moved on fairly quickly to the mainland and separated from their husbands. 75% of the camp was men, which... politically is probably not the wisest move in regards to safety and whatnot. But in what else is sort of like, and they've got two camps. There's another one called Vial, which is more of a military closed camp where the troublemakers tend to end up. But when you're putting all these different cultures together, there's going to be issues. There's going to be hierarchical. And then you've got, like I said before, the different languages. Communication becomes a battle and. Yeah, it's definitely a mess. It's definitely not ideal, but given, Greek government only had a certain amount of funding to be able to run these camps, it becomes such a, who's at fault, who's at blame kind of scenario. And everyone's pointing fingers all around and UN are in there. Like there's all these different bodies and groups. So it's a tough one.
So I've spoken about the safety of the patients now, and you've mentioned some of the issues that you've come across. What about the safety of you guys?
Yeah, well, there were a few hairy moments. I mean, we always must be in teams together. You never walk through a camp on your own. You have at least one other person with you. But because we did tea in the afternoon at Suda Camp, we would bring hot tea at 3:30 p.m. and they'd all come out and chat with us. And sometimes you'd have 10 men surrounding you, and you'd be it's a little bit uncomfortable, awkward, especially when there was that language barrier. But there was a few times that we were like, okay, we need to move, we need to leave. That we had a couple of guys walking through the camp when there was a stabbing. So there were moments like that. The police always clear out the volunteers first.
Gotcha, right.
But, but generally, I mean, the Syrians that I interacted with were beautiful people. I mean, they come from an educated middle to upper class, background where they had good university, healthcare. They've come from sort of a similar environment to us in Australia. Mm-hmm. Whereas you've got the other cultures and countries who've come from, war that's been ongoing for many, many years. They've been in survival mode before coming here. They're not as educated. So it's very different, the different cultures that we interacted with in regards to safety. But, I mean, generally, the mainland camps, because it is more women and children, you do feel very safe. And they do love seeing you there and want to learn from you. And, that's highlight of their day sometimes is just a conversation or, you teaching them something or talking to them and showing that love and concern.
So I've got to ask now just about the various donations that you've received. Now, I remember seeing this photo that you thought you were going to get a few boxes, but you got like half a garage full or something like that.
5 pallets worth.
Nice.
And more. Yeah, that was just me. The other guys in the team had stuff, we all bought stuff. We had suitcases of medical supplies. It was, there was a lot of luggage going on, but it was so well needed and so well used. And I'm shipping over another container end of March because now we've identified, who needs what and where. And the whole food, the Bioceuticals whole food powders, like the cows and the greens, the gojis, they're in hot demand, and same with the protein bars. Yep. So we'll be shipping a bunch of those off, and and just, making sure we can supply and support that project ongoing with
Now,
the food distribution.
it wasn't just Isaway and Bioceuticals. There were other companies involved in helping you as well, wasn't there? Do you want to give a shout out to these companies? Because I dip my hat already to you guys. Whoever helped, wow, good on you.
Yeah. So we had Biomedica, we had Bioconcepts, and we had so many different supplements, from each of these groups. The vitamin D that came in fabulously in the northern camps in Greece that Biomedica donated. We had the greens, powders. We had so many different things. I've got to think across the team now. What else? I had Metagenics providing energy bars for the next round that we're doing. So, just really grateful and appreciative. And then, we had fundraisers too so that we could buy groceries and food, and people were just so giving, which enabled us to buy a lot of stuff, and even things like educational books for the children in Farsi to English, because everything's in English and a lot of them can't read it. So, it's just little things like that you pick up when you're there that, huge. Lego for the older kids, like there's so many baby toys, but there's nothing in that sort of 5 to 8 year old range. So, we had a couple in the team donate a whole bunch of Lego and, older children's toys, and just to help, really fill those gaps.
Yeah. And I would imagine that the generosity of these various companies in itself would then present logistical problems in transporting these goodies over there. How do you accomplish all of this? What happens?
Yeah, well, that was one of my big tasks. So we took as much as we could in our luggage and excess luggage. My goal was to find a receiver and a warehouse so that we can send, things going on an ongoing basis, which we successfully did, especially on Chios and in Athens, where we can now store stuff so when our teams come, they can pick it up and run with it, as well as training the local NGOs on how to distribute as well and how to utilise the products. So when we're not there, especially the protein, the food-based, not the supplements that need to be prescribed or given from a pracky, it can be given out. So we've got a good plan in place to be able to do that, so we're not just sort of, because this is the risk, and the thing you said before, it's like, here's all this wonderful stuff, and then when it's gone, they feel the vacancy of that. We don't want that.
Yeah,
we want
that's
it to
right.
continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now to the kinds of practitioners that have answered the call. You've said that massage was a hit. So I'm going to give a call out to any and all listeners, and we'll put up websites so that people can get in contact with you. But you mentioned massage was a big hit. What about things like acupuncture? Would that be accepted there? Like it very well accepted in Asia, system of medicine.
That's right. And it's a good question. We didn't offer it or have anyone, provide it. I know there was one of the girls who did bring some of her own needles and was using it within the team on each other.
Oh, right.
And this is another thing, caring for the volunteers, the people volunteering is also just as important, because you can't give from an empty cup, right?
Yep.
So it's, that's crucial. So, it would be an interesting thing to trial acupuncture, and we had something I did notice actually in Lesbos. There's a bushflower essence, and she was Spanish, but she had all the different bushflowers. She set up like a little workshop outside one of the camps and was offering that emotional support, and they absolutely loved that. So I think, that from what I've seen is that they're open to most things as long as they don't think it's going to harm them.
Yeah.
If it's sort of explained to them how it will help, I think it will definitely. And it's just interesting. It's it's something different and creates good conversation and will benefit them as well.
Now, you've done this before. How many?
Yes.
So how many trips have you made now?
Oh, gosh, between India, Fiji and other countries in Asia, at least several. India we've been back to multiple times. That one really spoke to my heart, and we took our son when he was 10 over to volunteer with us in India, and one of the best things you can do as a family is volunteer together. It just really gives you a different perspective on life and how privileged we are back here in Australia. And it gives you empathy and understanding to the way other people live. It's easy to judge when you're looking at things on the what the media shows us and go, oh, they're bad people or whatever. But when you actually get the time to speak and play and talk to people from other backgrounds, you really, it's eye-opening and a heart-warming experience.
So this area, as opposed to Fiji, what would you say was the most surprising thing or different thing that you experienced from in Chios as opposed to, say, Fiji, you've mentioned, was more metabolic issues.
I was actually thinking from a political perspective, the bureaucracy was really the most surprising thing about all the different layers and, how challenging that can be. But from a people perspective, just how warm and thankful and appreciative. I mean, they've been through so much, and they've just got these big open hearts, and they want to help each other, and they'll do anything for their families to live a better life. And I guess that shouldn't surprise me. But it was just so wonderful to see, I think, and that's, walk away from that just going, wow, considering the extent of the danger that they've just come from, they still smile, they're still laughing, cracking jokes,
Yeah. So, there's so many questions whizzing around in my head now. And I guess one of them is, given that they're in a camp, which is a restricted physical, geographical area, I've spoken to a guy called Sean Hessler before. Hi, Sean. Call out to you with Naturopaths Without Borders. And what they focus on is teaching the local people to re-embrace their traditional diet. So, for instance, he focuses on moringa and amaranth and things like that. But, if these are in refugee camps where they're in the thousands, where do you grow this stuff? So is there facility for that sort of approach?
Well, some of them do have community gardens. So the camps on the mainland, because people, and this is the thing, people are in transit, so they tend to not want to get too established somewhere, and they can move around fairly quickly. But some volunteers had set up some gorgeous, gardens that had vegetables and fruits, which gives them something, to look forward to and do too for the green thumbs out there.
Yep.
Which, I think was really lovely. And it was all Greek, obviously local, whatever's local to the Greek, seasons, which is important as well, eating seasonally and, what the best nutrient needs you're going to get out of the food. So that was something I did see and something I'd love to tap into more, because I think that's, it works hand in hand with what we're trying to do. Yeah.
Just before I close off, there's one thing that I just want to remember, and that was a lecture by David McLeod many years ago. This is showing how old I am. And he was talking about treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder. And I'll always remember he was mentioning this, I think it was a woman who had PTSD, was really, exceptionally sad, obviously, but was bereft of something. And when all of the layers of pain were covered off, were taken away, one of the things that this immigrant had lost was her garden. And so David got her to reestablish a garden.
Yeah, that's excellent. And it brought back love into her life, happiness.
And brought back that sense of normalcy.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, and something so important is that they have something to look forward to and each day, that they're not just, while they're living in limbo, that they can still tap into their passions. But there's a couple of guys at Suda Camp who would go and use the gym because they're allowed to, roam into the town in the daytime and then have to be back by 7.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really good that they're still, even though they're not getting much food, they're still out there making the most of it and doing what they love. And even animals, I'd love to see more animals, because there's quite a lot of dogs and cats everywhere around Greece, interacting with the people, because they too can be very healing.
Absolutely. Yeah, as long as they themselves are looked after.
Yes, that's a good point.
So you're planning to head back when?
Yeah, the next trip will be June, July, so it'll be summer this time around.
2017?
And yeah.
June, July 2017. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, this year. So that will be the next group. And sort of between that time, we'll start looking at getting general volunteers to help, because they have a lot of general, construction type work, just handing out things like clothes that are needed all throughout the year. So anyone, just wants to do some general volunteering can go anytime.
Yep. So can you give our listeners some websites to look at? I want as much exposure for this as well. We'll definitely be putting this up on FX Medicine. One thing I just wanted to point out was, I know that you know my colleague Rebecca Guild, who showed me some photos of some of the clothes that these people had to wear. And I remember the pair of jeans that had been soiled, obviously, and somebody had to wear soiled jeans for God knows how long, because they didn't have access to the basic infrastructure that we have, i.e. clean running water.
Yeah.
Tell me how people can help. Like, how can we help? What needs to happen?
Yeah. Look, I think, a lot of the donations are fantastic, anything, because they need everything from clothes, donating secondhand clothes that you don't need, baby clothes, children's clothes. Jeans and shoes were actually the most demanded thing for this sort of next couple of months. They didn't have enough shoes and jeans as well. But coming into summer, it would have been more T-shirts and, cooler
Remember
clothing.
so our clothes that we'll be discarding in Australia, the summer-type clothes, are the ones that they will be needing.
That's it, because opposite seasons. So, anything, you don't have, we can definitely, because considering we're organising a shipment anyway, we can add, an extra pallet of clothes if anyone wants to give.
Yeah.
But food things are best purchased over there, like the grocery bags that we did, because then you can support the local economy as well, which I think is also important.
Very important, very good.
Yeah, but so our organisation, Involvement Volunteers International, the website's www.volunteering.org.au, nice and easy one.
Yep.
And on there you'll see a link to the Syrian Refugee Project. We'll be updating that now that we've come back and have a bit more understanding of, how it all works, and sort of the various locations that we'll be working in that we thought we could, benefit the most. This first trip was sort of going into lots of different camps and lots of different locations, but we'll narrow that down to sort of just 3 main ones for the next trip. And, we'll have another nutrition naturopathic team leave June, July. So looking forward to it.
Well, you can bet your bottom dollar. I think Beck's already on to. She's a master at getting the message out via social media. So I think that's already underway. But, I give a call out to any company that can spare any of these things, even if they want to contact you. Is there a way that somebody can contact you?
Yeah, so my email is Lauren, LAUREN, at volunteering.org.au, or they can call me as well, 0466 568 767.
Well done. Lauren, you're not just a pocket rocket, you're a pocket rocket with a heart. Well done. I can't thank you enough. You're just a beautiful human being. Well done for organising this. It's no small feat that you've accomplished.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely couldn't have done it without an amazing team and some really generous sponsors. So, shout out to all the companies that contributed and all the people that donated, and made it very worthwhile and successful. Well
done, Lauren. This is FX Medicine. I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook. If you're loving our FX Medicine podcasts, please don't forget to share us with your colleagues, family and friends. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today on FX Medicine, please engage with us and let us know what further topics you'd like us to cover. You can get in contact with us through our website fxmedicine.com.au, or look for FX Medicine in your favourite social media platform. You can also rate and review us on iTunes, and we'd really like to thank those who have already rated us. It's through your continued support that enables us to bring you current, complex and relevant topics to enhance your practice of natural medicine.